do you want to start? Is there an area? Oh, keep that there. That holds the hole in place. Anybody? Where do you want to start?
Right here.
What are we doing?
Okay, so think about a factory or some construction or residential.
Oh, the factory's going to spew pollutant into the water
So
system.
let's talk about the factory. So in industry, you have a lot of, obviously they have a lot of pollution that they have to deal with, so waste that they need to deal with. Normally, if you have a company or a factory, you have to get an NPDES permit. So it's a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. So thinking about factories or plants in the area, so like Hatfield or Mopac, JBS, and Ashers, they have to have this permit that will allow them to discharge a certain number of grams per liter of water in a creek system. So they might tell you, okay, this chocolate factory, Ashers, they can discharge like 2 grams per liter of water in the creek. So they have an actual amount that's going to fluctuate with the season and things like that. So they might discharge a little bit of their chocolate in here,
Steve wants to drink
or
that
maybe
water.
their chocolate
cocoa.
syrup. What? Oh no, that
It's
cork is really
leaking.
supposed to hold.
Draining the swamp.
1 second.
Steve, you're not gonna be able to get it out. No, the cow.
Here we go.
Well, good. We'll have
I
this
forgot
this
about
week.
this.
This is none.
Okay, so they're discharging some chocolate in here.
That's
Okay,
neat.
if they discharge too much, so they might have gone over their limit,
Thanks.
and somebody's driving by, and they oh no, and they crashed into the cow, and they saw that there's a lot of chocolate, and they smelled the chocolate in the stream. This could also happen with like JBS, and there's a lot of ammonia in the stream.
It's
So
still
a
leaking.
car's driving by.
It's in the
I
water.
know, it's okay. That cork should work better.
That cork.
But cars driving by, they might notice that there is some brown, smelly stuff in the creek, so they might call National Resource Conservation
Or OSHA.
in the area. Well, probably not OSHA so much, but maybe. So NRCS is like Natural Resources Conservation. I forget the S's. But they might come in and they might come and inspect it. So what they would do is they would test from where they see the chocolate syrup or whatever the pollutant is, and test all the way upstream. If they would continue going upstream and they wouldn't test positive for it anymore, then they would know, oh, it must be coming from here. They would test up this stream and see where it's coming from. Okay, so that's actually the process they go through to find the source of pollution. Okay, this is called a point source pollution. Anybody hear of that before? Okay, so it's a source of pollution you can point to. So it's one that they can actually trace. So that would be like an investigation that would take place. They could point to that and say that's the source of the pollution. If they find that they discharge more than they should have, then that company will be fined and they have to pay to the watershed, and maybe even have some cleanup efforts that they pay for. So that's kind of the process that they go through with industry. They also, so what I was talking about is they have a certain amount of grams per liter that they can discharge. That's called the total maximum daily load, so TMDL. So every organization or every industry that's making something will have this TMDL, total daily maximum load, TDM. Okay. So we'll move on to over there. So construction sites. What do you notice about that construction site? How could you eventually tell that it was a construction site?
Dirt.
Okay, so you didn't catch it right away, it's okay. But yeah, they have the soil there. When you have exposed soil, so if you have more than an acre of exposed soil, you have to have that same permit that an industry would have. So I keep forgetting what it's called, which is why I have it written down. It's called a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, NPDES, all kinds of acronyms. That one, they would only allowed to be discharging a certain amount of soil. So you don't think about soil as being a pollutant, but it's actually a major pollutant. It's one of the largest for agriculture. And so when rain first hits the ground, you wouldn't see it today because the ground is frozen. But when rain hits the ground, or when rain hits soil, what happens at first? Anyway, if you see a raindrop hit the ground really hard.
It goes down into the soil.
Yeah? And what happens to the soil?
Becomes
Gets
mud.
wet.
What happens at first?
Puddles.
We'll see if this actually works. I have a lot of issues today. Before puddles.
Mud splashes.
Splashes, good. So it's literally called splash erosion, which just means it hits the dirt and it sprays up. So it's called splash erosion. This isn't really a big deal until you get a lot of rain, and we are having a really dry spell here today. 1 second.
Well, that stinks.
There we go.
Oh.
So you got some splash,
What
right?
else can I say?
That's splash erosion. It's really simple, easy to remember. It just hits the ground and sprays up. Once you have a light rainfall, what would you have next? You'd see some what in the soil? Somebody said this.
Puddles.
Puddles. Okay, so you'll have puddling. Puddling is actually really good because if you have a light rain and there's only small puddles like there are here, that means that it's going to seep in, infiltrate into the soil. So that's kind of one limitation of our model here, is that you'll have seepage going through the soil, and it's going to bring any fertilizers or pesticides into the soil. Of course, you're not going to fertilize or pesticide at a construction site, but the soil will just stay and stick down. If you have a heavy rainfall, okay, you'll have runoff, which we've learned about already. And you can just see how the soil just keeps moving all over the place. Okay, so what are some things that a construction site might do to eliminate how much soil is leaving?
They make those retention basins.
Okay, yeah, good. So they might make a retention basin around the area, which is just like a lower area. They might put plants in there, so that's a vegetative buffer, it's called, and that's going to slow down the water. It's going to trap the sediment or the dirt and prevent it from going away. So that's great. So the water will leave, but not everything else.
So that's why like construction, like there's like a new construction site of new homes near where I live, and they have like a row of trees, I guess.
Yeah,
like, along
so
the
that's a
sidewalk.
vegetative buffer, yeah.
Yeah.
Or they might leave grass around there. What else have you seen at construction sites?
They have these like long tubes.
Yeah.
of-
So those are, They-
What's the sod things? The sod.
is it in a tube as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they would have like compost, something that would hold moisture in there, or they might have straw. They also can have stones inside of them. And so that is doing the same thing. It's slowing down the water, trapping the sediment. Anybody else see anything at a construction site?
Like towards the end when they're done, they have that big mound of leftover dirt. They
Yeah.
usually like put grass seeds
Oh,
on, I guess,
too.
to hold it
Okay.
together.
There's something similar. So they have the rolls, and then they also have silt fences, which are very similar. So it's like a fence with like a paper or plastic barrier on it or sheet that's trapping the sediment the same way. Another thing you might see are like a lot of rocks right where the construction vehicles come in and leave. Why do you think you might have rocks as like a driveway, not just pavement?
So it doesn't pick up that dirt, the vehicle doesn't pick up the dirt.
Right. So the vehicles, as they're going out, the dirt is trapped in the rocks and also stones and things like that. So like, have you ever been behind a truck and you get like stones hitting you or dirt hitting you? It's trying to cut down on the amount of sediment that's leaving the system. So that's good. And getting on the roads and things like that. Okay. So those are all called best management practices, things that they can put in place to reduce erosion and sedimentation or deposition. So that just means depositing sediment in the water, which would continue to happen if we kept going through. There we go. Oh, tree's about to fall over. Okay.